Ladies and gentlemen, this platform and this season is all about shine your light. And we want to shine our light into Africa. We want to shine a light over communities. We want to shine your light over lives. And that's what we're going to do today. And I'm going to tell you what you need to do in a moment, but just get yourself ready. I've got a gentleman here. I just want to hear his story. And our dear brother Ronnie Mulema, and Ronnie. You're from Africa. Can you please tell us where you're from? Which country in Africa you're from, sir?
So I was born and raised in Uganda, in Kampala, in East Africa.
And what was life growing up for you in Kampala, Uganda?
So for me, life began as a firstborn child of a man called Joseph and a woman called Mary. And I love to say that, especially at this time of the year, because that's kind of the hope we had.
Hmm.
I'm the firstborn child of four boys, two girls, and what characterized us, what I could summarize my childhood was that we were born in extreme poverty. And this was no surprise to anyone because my parents were born in extreme poverty. By my whole family, that was the story. And so there was no surprise being there. And if I were to be lucky and get married, probably get married to a girl who's born in extreme poverty, my children will be also born because the cycle continues like that. Some people think about poverty as the lack of food. I can tell you, we got used to that. You learn to adapt to that, traveling distances to fetch water, you get used to that. Lack of education, you kind of get used to that. But the thing that was hard to shake off is the hopelessness, the darkness that dwelled within us, knowing that we will never amount to anything. I didn't think I would amount to anything at all. So we lived on the outskirts of Chambogo University, which is like in the east of Kampala.
Okay.
And we lived in a valley. So what my parents did, what a lot of parents try and do in similar situation is to send the child to school and hopefully things might change.
Hmm.
So through their odd jobs or trying to get some funds, they would send me to school. And my journey to school took, there were so many routes to get, but the shortest one went through Chambogo University. It cut across up the hill. And I would walk past, through the university, walk past the Department of Civil Engineering, have a look, admire the guys, usually boys who are there, and then carry on after about 45 minutes, get to the top of the hill where Chambogo Primary School was. And that was every day. But occasionally, many times when we got there, my name would be read out. And they would say, and lots of other children, and say, you have not paid your school fees, come back after you've paid your school fees.
Oh, wow.
And you didn't know when that would be. I didn't want to go back home because I would find an angry father. There was no joy in our house. I wished I belonged to another family. I wished I lived somewhere else. And that was the reality. And and I think what poverty did was to sort of be like a thief or like a knife that was put on things that held us together as a family, and things fell apart. My father eventually had to leave and go stay somewhere else. The relationship I had with my siblings is not one that's galvanized. Everyone was just struggling for themselves. And so for me, what I would say about my childhood growing up was not that I was thriving, not that I was hoping, I was just existing.
And
And
this lasted till how old?
so this went on like the first like 8 years of my life. That was my reality. And sometimes you try and I look back and think, did I have any dreams? But actually, no, because poverty had spoken to me that I had no value at all. There was no evidence with my family that things could change at all. And I wasn't even expected to complete primary school education.
And so you grew up. So let me just ask you a question.
Mhm.
Um, what would you say was your earliest childhood memory that you can remember that struck a chord within you and made you think, "Oh, how hopeless is my life?" Can you remember?
Yes, I was 7 years old and I was running through one of the blocks at Chambogo University, and it's an office block. And I was running with my friend, and then it's somebody opened the door to get out. Running through sort of an alleyway, and it was a glass door. And I still have the scar on my forehead. I have the scar on my knees. I spent about 3 months in hospital. My mother was there, and we didn't have like food within the hospital. We were lucky there would be some good Samaritans who would pass by. That was the end of me going to school, really, because that was the money they would have used to pay for my school fees. And I remember coming back with a cast back home and walking around with crutches and not even having the strength to wish things were different, just the acceptance of a grim situation. I remember I was 7 years old when that happened.
Wow. I want to ask you, what changed?
So when I was 9 years old, I again, I was at school. So whenever they would send us back home for lack of, sometimes we went back to school and hoped for the best. Um, and then again on this day, I think it was about February, in February, my name was called out again. And we knew what we sort of like when there's a fire drill, we know what to do. So we thought, okay, they're going to say the same thing. But this time they said, go to the head teacher's office. Now, my school, Chambogo Primary School, is a small place, and the head teacher's office is maybe about 20 meters away or something, or less than that. But that was like the longest walk I've ever walked in my life because I had been there many times and there was no good news in that place. And maybe some of you now on the stream right now, you recognize that feeling when you're going through something. And on the outside, nobody quite knows what you're going through, but on the inside, it's dark. You know, based on the experience, that the outcome is negative. And that's how I thought. So we walked, we got there. But to cut the long story short, there were people from the church, St. Kakumba Chapel, who were there. And we had photos of us taken. We were going to get sponsors. And I remember being given a piece of paper like that and putting my dusty foot on it, lots, and just tracing out because I was going to get my
Foot. What,
first
what,
pair
what
of
do you mean
shoes.
putting a dusty foot on what?
Well, I didn't have any shoes, but they didn't have any shoes until I was 9. So, walking around with that. So they were trying to get my shoe size
Okay.
so we could get my first pair of shoes. And there are lots of things, but it meant I wouldn't be sent home again for lack of school fees. It means if I went to school, I had school lunches, I had scholastic materials. If I got sick, I would go to the church and say, I am sick, and and Compassion would be able to cater for those logistics. Compassion, my sponsor, Jan Rice, and her husband, Leonard, almost came and became the source of hope in our house. We still stayed in that two-roomed house. I still belonged to the same family, still went to the same school. And yet, because of the fact that I had a sponsor, how I felt about on me on the inside started to change. How I felt about where I lived started to change. I dared to dream that things could be different. And I believe that's what my mother, at that point, a single mother, must have thought that, one of her children is things are changing around. And a lot of things started changing within me. My performances in school started getting better. And I would like to believe my brothers and sisters looking at me now and were not in extreme poverty anymore because there was hope. They could see an example of somebody who was coming through. And I remember I think I was about 12 or 13, my sponsor writing to me and asking me, what do you want to do when you finish uh, education? And I said the only thing that I knew, the only thing I hoped, I said I wanted to be a civil engineer. I didn't even know what that meant, apart from the fact that I saw for these guys at the Department of Civil Engineering wearing trainers, jeans, looking cool. I just wanted it to be a cool boy. And I think my sponsor prayed into that. I don't remember praying into that. My sponsor believed that. I don't remember believing that. Because actually, 12 years later, in that same university, Chambogo University, I did graduate with a bachelor's degree in civil
Wow,
engineering.
wow, wow.
Yeah.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. And how are you now? How are things? What has okay, so let me without trying to be emotional because love is a verb, not necessarily
Mm.
a feeling.
Mhm.
Or feelings sometimes help us to do the right thing. What would you say to everyone on this platform concerning sponsoring a child like you
Yeah.
that had no hope or was in a hopeless situation, but having a sponsor? What would you say to everybody on this platform?
Gosh. Um, I think the first thing I would say is thank you, even if you're just thinking about it, thank you. Because for children living in poverty, they don't think anybody even thinks about them at all. So if you're thinking about it, thank you very much, on their behalf. Um, but I think also one of the things I know, because I am a sponsor myself, sponsor two children in Burkina Faso. And one of the things you think, well, I'm just paying 32 pounds a month, is it going to make a difference? And I can say, if you're one of those thinking, is it going to make a difference? Yes, it does make a difference. Because I have seen the cycle of poverty broken in my own lifetime. I've got
Mm,
three daughters, Emily, who's 8, Esther, who's 5. Whoa, is 5? Yeah, she's nearly 6. Mary, who's 4. And those children are the first children in my family to be born outside the cycle of poverty.
mm,
So we can actually break that cycle. We can bring a light in the darkness. I think some people also think, well, you've got three brothers, two sisters. How about them? Why is
mm,
it just you? And when you sponsor one child, my sponsor Jan, when she sponsored me, little did she know she was sponsoring the family. When she
God.
brought light into my darkness, she was bringing light into my family's darkness. My mother, being a single mother at that, when my father left, took out a loan from the bank. This is after about 6 years of me being in the sponsorship, 5 or 6 years. And I believe she would never have done that had I not been sponsored. But she believed something good could now come out.
Mm,
And she started a chicken business. And through that, some of my brothers and sisters also managed to go to school. So this hope that came through my sponsor to me radiated into
mm,
my whole family. And,
wow.
I know that next year, the compassion project that I was in at Kakumba Chapel is closing because there's no need for it. The community has been transformed completely. There's
Mm,
no child in that community now living in extreme poverty.
wow.
So if you are thinking about it, I would say,
Look
do
at me. Look,
it.
just look at me. I am proof that
Yeah,
sponsorship works, basically.
yeah.
That's what you're saying.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.